Hello, today we are meeting Sandy Glaze from Ontario, Canada, and we'll be talking about very important concerns of our times. Hello, Sandy.
Hi, Alex. How are you?
Perfect. And you?
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Okay, because you are showing up for the first time in Porozmawiajmy TV, please introduce yourself, a little bit of your story, just to make it smoother.
Okay. My name is Sandy Glaze. I started out in a career path in the financial services industry. And what had happened while I was working in that industry, I started really to get to understand the family dynamics because I saw such a cross section of families. And I started to observe patterns that were happening. Things were happening in certain families and not others. People who had money didn't have the same problems grasping financial concepts as some people who didn't. And I just started to, I'm a very inquisitive person. Why is this happening? And as I noticed over time, people, as the taxes were going up in the province and a new premium is coming in and a healthcare tax, and then all of a sudden harmonized sales tax, people were getting more and more stressed out because their incomes weren't going up to reflect that. So then once people started having more faith in me and they started understanding how I work, well, then they would start telling me stories about their lives. And a lot of them told me, if you're going to invest your life savings with me, you're going to trust me. That's just the way it is. And they would start telling me stories about things that had happened to them in their childhood. And a lot of it came down to abuse, neglect, child sex abuse that they experienced. And I started to watch the eyes of them go blank as they're telling me their pain. And I never understood that their soul was leaving their body because they couldn't handle what they had been through because they hadn't dealt with it yet. So that's where I spent 20 years of my career understanding the dynamics of families right across a broad spectrum. And the common denominator came down to abuses they experienced in childhood. At that time was my understanding, and lack of money. So and as we find that this divide is getting bigger between the haves and the have-nots, more people are experiencing suffering and abuses because they can't defend themselves. And it came to my understanding around 2012 that this is intentional in the system to create this divide. And as soon as you understand that it's intentional, that they are trying to hurt a whole spectrum of the population, boom, the lights go on. Then you can see the abuse because you start to recognize the patterns and you see how it is all played out. You see how it is laid out from the top of our society, whatever those echelons and positions are, right down to the very frontline people who keep the nonsense in play. Yes, so this is where I started really having a look at what was going on and realized just we're screwed up by design. It's intentional, so we can undo it.
And we know also from the history that Stalin and Hitler were also abused by their fathers in their childhood. That's why they hated their fathers, so they hated themselves and expressed that hate outwards towards millions of people.
Is it okay if we keep an open mind and explore other possibilities? Because sure. I know we've been trained to look at things in terms of victim and victimizer, but there's a whole spectrum of disordered personalities in there. And I'm going to start from the worst case scenario. You've got psychopaths who will kill you to get what they want. You have sociopaths. Drop it down a notch. They still have the arrogant, grandiose opinion of themselves. They're entitled to more than what they think they are. They will destroy you emotionally, but not physically kill you. Then you go into the narcissists who absolutely love themselves. Wasn't that Narcosis who looked into the pool, loved himself so much he fell in and drowned? We have a lot of highly educated people who are narcissists who think they are really better than everybody else and they love themselves, but they don't understand the role they play. Then we go into enablers, the people who will turn a blind eye to get paid and pretend they don't see what's going on. They'll maybe get a financial benefit. It could be a mother or a wife in the family or a sister. It could be somebody in the system. Then we go into shame-based people that will make you feel bad for speaking up and flip it on the victim. Then we go into bystanders who pretend it's not happening. And then if we're lucky, we eke out about 20% of the population who actually are decent and esteemed appropriately and they have right relationships. So this is a whole spectrum. That might be what they say about Stalin and Hitler, but then you look at a lot of what they're talking about with the elites. I'm not going to go into too much, but a lot of the trafficking and the issues that are surfacing about what's happening in these secret societies. There's a lot of families that are doing this, but they don't call out these families. They call out usually the poor families and say it's happening. So there's still a divide between the haves and the have-nots that we need to understand the behaviors and not just who's doing it, in my opinion.
Yes, and especially in the politics, it is obvious. There is a Polish writer and psychologist, Andrew Łobaczewski, very famous for his book, Political Ponerology. This word ponerology means that those perpetrators, those bad guys, are in power, and
Yes.
the most cruel and ruthless people get to the power, so they want to control, because
Yes.
in their heart they are not able to control themselves, so they want to control outwardly.
And I would even take that further and say we all have, when we look at our emotional component in ourselves, quite often the Western society has poo-pooed our emotions and said, oh, you're over emotional. Instead, we should be learning how to feel, process our emotions, feel what comes with that. But my understanding with some of these people, they don't have a proper sense of being able to feel love and connection. So they tweak their emotions by torturing, but they still get off on the emotional suffering of another. So basically their wiring needs to hurt somebody to get ahead instead of love someone. It's absolutely reversed. I'm not trained in any kind of neurology to be able to explain that better than that, but they get off on it, in my opinion, again.
And as you said, willing to control others comes from traumas in the childhood, and some very strong cases go to the levels of wanting to hurt children. This kind of stuff. I mean, molesting, trafficking for money, this kind of stuff. So a little bit of the sad topic, but we need to go through this, because around the world it happens a lot, even though the slavery seems to be erased, but it's not true.
It's not true, and it's becoming more and more prevalent. And as we get away from a heart-centered society to a very left-brain intellectual society that thinking is knowing, when thinking is just a matter of programming, so people don't care about what happens to somebody else if it gets them ahead financially. People are also very taught to be focused on consumerism. Money, the money to do what they want is their marker for success. And look at net worth. We look at people now and say, what's your net worth? As if that's the highest aspect of being a human being in the financial sense, instead of saying, are you decent? Are you kind? Are you moral? Are you just? Do you want what's good for you and the people around you? So we've lost sight. We don't even know where the goalposts are anymore of humanity and decency. So when people are looking to traffic, I met a woman in a store maybe a year ago, and she said that what's happening, the perpetrators are going up to kids and saying, I want a blonde-haired girl or boy this age. They're going to the mall, taking pictures of the children, sending them to the perpetrator, and the perpetrator says, go and befriend them. So even children are getting ready to traffic children. I'm not putting this on the children. What needs to happen is the adults need to grow up and take some responsibility for what they've allowed to happen in a sick society. If all these children are being trafficked, why aren't, I'm going to use the quotation, healthy adults having appropriate sexual relations with other adults? Why are they so messed up that they aren't even looking for love? It's just the mechanics of sex now. Why? What's missing? What's gone wrong in the human heart? What's been turned off in the human heart that makes anyone think that this is acceptable? And this goes into the enablers, the shame-based people, the bystanders. You know how many women work in social services have said to me, oh, children are having sex younger and younger nowadays. How would you know unless some perverted professor taught you that in your university courses? Have you talked to any children about sex? And they go, no, of course not. Then you're just hearing gossip and rumors and what they want, programming of what they want you to know. So we have an opportunity to peel all this back and look at it and say, why are humans so messed up emotionally? We're messed up psychologically, we're messed up mentally, and we're messed up spiritually. Why are we so off the mark? And some of us are going to be ones speaking up and some are not. And I'm to the point, I feel a bifurcation is coming. I honestly don't give a damn what happened to anybody in childhood anymore. If you're using it as an excuse to hurt now and you're hiding it, it was wrong then or it's wrong now. Pick one. You don't get both.
Because the truth will set you free, as the expression says. So
not all of them. Some of them will go to jail, but it's not the point. They need to own up for and be accountable for some of their behaviors. I don't get to say who goes to jail. I don't get to say what the punishments are. I'm here to say we can do better as a human race. We've been blown off track. What is on track look like? And let's get back to it. And I will support the people who are saying, no, it's not okay that okay, so look what's happening in the United States right now. The US border, southern border's open, hundreds of thousands of people are crossing over and the human trafficking is back up. There was a screen, I think it was on Fox News, that said President Joe Biden is human traffickers' best friend. Is this by accident? So this is up to us to wake up and say, we're not buying anymore, but how many people, because they think they've got a nice house, they've got maybe a couple homes, they've got nice cars, they live in a nice neighborhood, pretend this isn't happening. You're part of the problem. Ignorance is no longer an option. And it doesn't matter if they're going to stay ignorant. Somebody else will take care of that in some ways, but we are going to show people how to have right relationship with self and others, that this nonsense stops.
Mm-hmm. So Biden now is known for children trafficking, and Clintons are known for drug dealership. Yeah,
they're also known for trafficking in Haiti.
Uh-huh.
These people are they've been getting away with this for so long that I don't see how anyone can say they don't know. They use Family and Children Services or CPS to procure the children. 70% of the children come from there. Is that a coincidence? And they all say it's the boyfriend experience. And when you go to a human trafficking event and you say, well, how many started out in Family and Children Services? They say about 70%. They give me the same statistics. I say, how many are First Nations? Oh, about 50%. But they say it's the boyfriend experience because they don't want girls trusting boys. Don't get me wrong. Parents haven't been shown how to parent. I'm not a physical parent this lifetime. I don't get to sit here on my soapbox and tell everybody else what is right or wrong. That's not what this is about. This is about looking at it and saying, what makes a healthy child emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, and sexually? Right now, so many kids are overweight because they're eating fast food because that's cheaper than healthy food. They're not exercising. Well, where's the parent to say, this is your temple? You don't dumb it down with this garbage. But they don't know. Where's the parent that says, my role is to help you have appropriate levels of self-esteem and be confident to go out and achieve what you want in the world? And I've seen parents shame the children to make them quiet so the parent stays in charge. No. We all have roles, but we don't even know what we're aiming for anymore. How do you tell a child if you don't believe in God? A lot of people have been hurt through religion, but they blame the concept of God, not the people in the religion who hurt them. So they say there's no such thing as God. Well, then that stops that child from thinking there's ever anything bigger than them. And then, so that stunts the spirituality. So now all they can do is look at each other and they look at people and then they start competing with people. So it's all ego driven. Oh, that person has more than I have. I want that, what they have. You can't have what they have. Get your own stuff. So there's so many areas that we have to, break it down and look at this, but understand that this is all inverted. It's all backward to demoralize, demean humanity so that we keep hurting ourselves so that we don't aspire to be our best selves. Look at the transgender movement. Like you're basically, it's up 40%, rapid onset gender dysphoria is up 40% for females between 15 and 24. They're the breeding age. They're getting them to do double mastectomies. They're cutting their breasts off. These girls hate themselves. They're taking muscles out of their forearm to make a penis. That is never going to form be able to have an erection like a normal penis. It's just not going to happen. So then now you're not feeling your sensations. And then if you want to go back, you've had puberty blockers, you can't go back to your normal, what your birth sex is. Where's the mental health midgets to say, no, cutting somebody's dick off is not good for them? The whole system needs to be called out. So these are the enablers. They get paid because if you're in crises and you've had all kinds of trauma in your life, you're going to have to come to me to fix you. And it's going to take all life because you're going to have to be in therapy for life, which means cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. Let's have a standing appointment Tuesday at 7, and I will make $4,000 off you in a year, and you're still going to be as fucked up as when you came through the door in the first place. How am I doing?
So perfect. So this is the part of the genocide around the world, and those perpetrators also want to legalize this
Pedophilia.
this process. For example, in Poland, child trafficking is called foreign adoption. There is known in Poland activist Paweł Bednarz, who already, I think, 4 or 5 years fights for ceasing, for quitting the foreign adoptions, which are obvious child trafficking. Most of the children go to Italy, and you know, Italy, Vatican, and then somewhere else.
Totally.
Nobody knows.
So nobody gets to say they don't know. If you work in this pedophilic, psychopathic, genocidal, homicidal system, you're part of the problem. I don't even know if I care how nice the people are anymore. They see what's wrong, but if you're not standing up to your boss who will fire you for speaking the truth, you're part of the problem. Your family's no more important than the families that you're ripping apart and having them be trafficked. And oh, you're just going to get by this lifetime and that's going to be okay for you. We all have to rise into our higher conscience and say this is not acceptable. So why do they need so many children for sex? Why are so many adults so screwed up sexually that they need these children? And I'm not going to go into the rituals. I have a strong understanding of sex energy. Not sure that's where I want to go today. But we have to understand how powerful that energy is. Part of it is the trafficking. Part of it, they want to blend us with AI so that we can be the transhumanists and they can control our minds with all the electronics that are going on in the satellites. And it's a mess out there. It seems the smarter people are, the higher their IQ, the lower their emotional potential, and the lower their humanity is.
And Adrenal Chrome topic also.
And Adrenal Chrome. So this is how screwed up, this is how intentional this is. So somebody had someone had posted on Facebook about circumcision. Circumcision is male genital mutilation, female genital mutilation, we're aware what that is. But they were making a comment about all the emotions that went through the baby's body and cortisol and the fear and an adrenaline that was going through. So I started looking up adrenaline and understanding the emotions because that's a very traumatic experience for a little boy. We call that normal. It's not normal. Oh, maybe the little boy can't wash himself. Then you wash the little boy until he's old enough that you can train him. This is part of your daily routine, right? Like this is common sense, but everybody's got rote answers. So when they talk about the adrenal chrome, what they're doing is terrorizing the children. That was what I was saying about earlier with these people that come in and they can't feel emotion. They can't feel love. You show them love, they're going to shrink away from you because they can't feel it. They're not capable, but they can terrorize somebody to get that emotional high. So adrenal chrome, I'm looking it up on the internet just to see what it says. And now there's a report, I think it's in the UK I can't remember, the Telegraph, UK Telegraph newspaper. And it says that adrenaline isn't real, that they were wrong about it. New science, hey, new science, new research shows, we're always on the hamster wheel of new science, that adrenaline isn't real because they're trying to downplay adrenal chrome. That's how sneaky these little buggers are. They already are planting the seed. So somebody who wants to remain stupid will pull up the article and say, see, it's not real. I tell you, that person is out of scale of 1 to 10 is shallowness. They're probably only reaching about a high of 2 or 3. They're shallow. And when you can test for things like this. I don't know if we'll have time to do that today, but you can test to see how shallow somebody is when you know how to read energy fields. So I can read energy, right? I'm not reading you because I've not asked permission, nor have you given permission, and I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do it on air anyways. But you can go in and see what's right or what is wrong. You can tell by what degrees if you know how to measure energy. You can tell who knows and is lying and who is really just stupid. Some people are just stupid, but some of them know on some level. And as our consciousness raises, we're going to start to be able to see this without even having the conversation with them. We're just going to know who's lying. We're going to know who's playing stupid. We're going to know who doesn't have the strength to stand up for somebody else. So they're going to let somebody else knock them down so that they stay safe. We need to level this playing field. Either we level it up or level it down. I'm good either way. I've made amends. I've sold everything I own. I made amends with my creator, and it's like, what do we need to do here? But this shit is ending. And if the current governments can't do it, then let's get a new one in there. Let's get these guys out. The financial system is a dog and pony show. I worked in that for 20 years. I can tell you so many examples of fraud, not in the company I work for. I work for a couple of great companies, but in the system itself. So unless you're highly astute, you don't see the games. You don't see when they try to test investor sentiment and they knock the markets down a number of points to see if everybody's going to panic so they can go in and buy up. It's like working with, say, 40, 50, 60-year-olds who have the mentality of an 8-year-old. You just sit there and you go, really? Really? We got to sit here and watch you try to get more money? Can you imagine, Alex, if we told every corrupt politician out there, write down on a piece of paper the number of dollars you need before you stop being a son of a bitch, and we're going to give it to you. But the deal is, once we give you this money, you have to stop being a son of a bitch and do the right thing. How many could actually put the number down? They don't think this is just the high of getting something from somebody else. This is the psychopathy. Can you imagine Bill Gates saying 38 billion is what I need? He wouldn't stop fucking the world, because that's not who he is. And this is what people don't understand about disordered personalities. They get off on this stuff, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So we talked about problems. Now let's talk about the solutions. So what do you suggest?
What solution and what aspect are you talking? Tell me what area of what we just talked about you would like the solutions.
Solutions from the level of single person to the level of society. So let's say someone was traumatized in the childhood. You said that you don't actually work with the trauma. So what do you do? And then
so it's not that I don't work with the trauma. So what happens? Let's say someone has an epiphany and they want to make changes in their life. I always ask, show me what is your problem? What do you want to work on? I've had people tell me I've been told I have to get both my knees replaced and I don't want to have knee surgery. So because they tell me what the problem is doesn't mean that's where the pain is sourced. So I go in, I tap into their energy field, usually from my thymus. I go in and I just read their energy. And one woman, I was going through clearing emotions, and usually they have an emotional component because many of the pains and suffering from childhood is by somebody you cared about, whether a teacher, a coach, a parent, priest, caregiver. It doesn't matter. They're in society. There's somebody you trusted, a neighbor, a friend, an extended family member. So it's not just family that this happens. But what happens, so this one example, I go in and I start reading her emotions and I'm like, are these yours? Because the consciousness field is so complex. We have our own consciousness. We're connected to all that is, was, and never will be. So we have timelines, past, present, and future to take into consideration here. So I went into this example. I went in and I said, I go, these aren't even yours. And I pulled up the first 6 emotions were her mother's, because her mother didn't. Messed up families have been happening for generations. So it's going to take a lot to clear. So anyways, I went through and cleared her first 6 emotions from her mother. And then the next 6 emotions were her father's. So she's a sponge and an empath as a child. She's carrying on the weight of the world, which is manifesting as knee problems, but it's energetic and spiritual and emotional. So it turns out her father was in World War II and he never healed. You know, they come home, they have two weeks on the ship to get back home, and he never healed. And we always think soldiers have post-traumatic stress disorder from what they saw and what happened. Bullshit. It's from what they were made to do as well. They were meant to do things to hurt humanity that they're never meant to do. So we have to look at that in a whole new context. And I'm not blaming them. They thought they were doing the right thing, and then they got put in a position of being abusers. But so when I clear out about her father, she said when her father came home, he wasn't present. He'd be very abusive, very explosive. Every 2 years, he killed the family dog because he liked puppies. So she was traumatized by so many things that weren't even her trauma, just from what she witnessed and experienced. She wasn't hit or sexually abused. And I'm watching her and I'm like, you got to go look in the mirror. And she went and looked in the mirror. She had like 15 years taken off her face, all that stress she was carrying. She walked out the front door and had no knee pain. She got down to by the car and she looks at me and smiles because my knees don't hurt. You're carrying the world, girl. It's heavy. It's not yours. So this is how we start breaking down in the individual situation. We start looking at what's yours, what's not yours. I've had people tell me they were raped in their teenage years. And when she started explaining the story, and I'm like, okay, did you see him after that? She goes, yeah, we dated for 2 years. Then you weren't raped. You had a misadventure. You were both drunk. And I'm not minimizing. When people tell me stories, I can discern between what is real and what is not. And I can ask questions till I get to the point where that person understands, well, it took the shame off of her because she didn't have to feel she was raped. Do you know what I mean? You made a bad choice. There's no doubt about it. Let's clear it. It was your best friend's father. You shouldn't have had an affair with him for 2 years. Does that make sense? So not everything is as it appears to be in the energy fields, the emotional fields, or the spiritual field. So when somebody comes in and says, I want to clear something, well, what is it you want to clear? Tell me. And then I'm not attached to an outcome. I go in and read it. And then I ask the questions. The client always knows the answer. They just don't know how to read their own energy field. I can give countless examples where people come in and tell me it's one thing and it's another. I had one client come in and tell me that her ex-husband had left 4 years ago and was married to somebody else, and their daughter was having a child, and she had to see this man in 3 months and didn't know she could handle it. By the end of the session, it turns out she didn't want to be married anymore, so she made him the asshole, withheld love. He left, found somebody else, and now she's demonizing him because society makes it be that she couldn't have left the relationship because of her religious upbringing. Alex, she sat back in the chair and went like this. Just the relief over her face. Your ex-husband's not an asshole. You fell out of love. Does there have to be blame? She was, my daughter always told me I never did enough to make the marriage work. Okay, so now let's heal. You heal yourself. You send out the energetic healing of forgiveness. She said, my ex-husband will call me and thank me for not being like horrible during our divorce. That's because she wanted out. But we got to start owning these things. But most people are so outside of themselves, they don't even feel their own emotions. They don't know what they're feeling. So they go through these little rote motions of trying to do what they think society wants of them. And it's like, society is bait. It's abusive. It's homicidal. It's genocidal. It's satanic. It's just a mess. So why are we using that as a marker for what guides our souls and our conscience?
Okay, so let's do some self-help training, maybe. How do you... if you would like to teach someone how to discern between truth and false inside someone else, how to recognize what is true, what is false, or where is the truth, how would you teach this? Because you know it.
I think I understand what you're saying. So in this example that you're asking, you have to clean out your own stuff first. You have to clean out emotional pain and trauma. So we have like 7 main chakras. They each have a physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual component. If you have pain in all those areas, you have 28 potential pain areas in your body, depending on how many abuses you've experienced, or betrayals, or hurtful experiences, or traumas, whatever you call them. You clean yourself out first. This takes a bit of work. And everyone says go in and do the inside work first. I agree. But hang on, but what are you looking for? But then once you do that, then you go outside and you can read.
Okay, but the pains are stored in the certain levels, yeah?
Yes.
So if there's a pain of heart, so it always is on this level.
Yes.
Yeah? Many layers only in the heart. If it's physical, like money, it goes to down to the first chakra, yeah? Many levels of this trauma.
Not necessarily. So I'll give an example. You can have a broken heart because somebody you care about betrayed you. Maybe somebody left the family unit and abandoned you. That can also register in your sacral chakra because that's where our emotions are processed. So it doesn't mean it can only affect one area in your body either. I had one woman I was clearing and I said, your pain is in your right ovary. And she goes like this, and she goes, yes. And I go, why? She goes, because that ovary hasn't given me a baby yet. She knew. So it's not, so you really have to have a deep understanding of energy, which is your chakra systems, your meridians, and I work with the endocrine system. So I understand where these energies and trapped energy can be blocked in any of those areas so that I go in. So it's not as simple as showing somebody how to clear somebody else. You have to know yourself. You have to know when you feel things in your body, what it means. Because quite often I'll be working with someone. One of my clients said her diaphragm, she said it felt like the ring of Saturn was squeezing her and she could never get ahead in life. And we sat here clearing, and then I go in and tap into her energy. Next thing you know, I'm like, oh, I can't breathe. She belches, and I went, oh. So this is a dark energy in her. So then we're sitting opposite ways so we don't transfer energy onto each other. And then she closes her eyes and she goes, there's a pool of mud in front of me. She goes, there's a little boy in it. And I go, what's he doing? She goes, he's standing up. I go, what's he look like? Because I'm thinking maybe somebody in her past or whatever. And she goes, he won't turn around. I go, tell him to turn around. She goes, he says, no. I go, tell him to turn around. You have to be in charge of your body. And she says, he turned around and his clothes were clean, but it was a demon child. I go, cast it out. So we have no idea the sources of these. So it's not as easy as saying that I can show somebody how to do it. I can show you how to read your energy field. And I had a client a few weeks ago that came in and we spent 3 hours here. He was an engineer and so hooked into his left brain thinking, he was taking in the information and taking notes, but he wasn't feeling and he was not being with it. So it took me numerous strategies to get him in his body. And then we stood up and practiced muscle testing. And I always use the sway test. What is your name? And when you say your name, you lean forward. Usually it's a yes. You lean back, it's a no. But it doesn't matter. You want to know what your yes and no, what your body tells you. So he told me what his first name is, and he leaned back. And I said, maybe you're wired backward. He goes, wait a minute. I was adopted. Maybe that wasn't my name at birth. He laughed because he found more information about himself, how to feel within his body what truth is. So it's not a intellectual exercise. There's mentalism involved in it, but there's emotion involved in it. There's a desire to know what's true. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it's complicated, but it doesn't mean that we can't find our way through. This is just the beginning of what we're talking about. And when we understand, I'd sent you some visual aids. When we understand how we've all been dumbed down and duped and why we don't see this whole picture of what the human psyche is, the emotional body, the spiritual body. I don't go into politics. I don't go into religion, and I'm not gender specific. It doesn't matter if you're a male or female, and there's 2 sexes. This is all just to confuse your conscious growing when you have 125 choices or whatever they give us in identities. That's all bullshit. And I will say this, I've said it before, academics are sexually retarded. I will hold that line. I can debate that line. I can articulate that line, and I can tell them why they don't know what they're doing. And it's not about ego. You're confusing a whole generation of humanity because you're all towing a line that's a lie. So when we understand what's missing in our psyche, we're not taught that in the intellectual education system. We're not taught to know your inner knowing. You know, I have a client who hears voices. Now he did have demons because he was partying too much and made some bad choices, but he was labeled as schizophrenic. I'm like, you're not schizophrenic, you got demons, but you got to know how to get them out. And everybody has to command their own energy. So this exercise is going to be first and foremost about learning to command your own so that you can go in and read somebody else's. I go in and read other people's energy. The odd person, I'll help get their energy going and take out the darkness because they don't know how. But if they don't start doing their own lifting, I'm not here to clean up. I'm not their vacuum cleaner. You can't go and party every weekend and then come back Monday morning and say, Sandy, I got demons. Because I'll say, yes, you do. How are you going to handle that? Does that make sense? So there's so much we don't even know about the human psyche. I work a lot with energy systems. I'm going to show you one of my materials here. So spiritual clearing. They don't teach you this in Western society. They don't want you knowing. They don't want you to know that there's energy grids in the house, that electromagnetic frequencies can bring energies in that can affect your mood. They don't want you understanding that there's lines in the earth, ley lines, curry lines, underground water that can affect what goes on if there's demons that show up around you. They don't want you knowing that. People sometimes say, why do I always have bad luck? Why am I always tripping on things in the house? Maybe you have little scuttler energies that are just here to annoy you, but they're not demonic. But you don't know how to clean up your own house. So if you're looking at suggestions of what to do first, a lot of people understand the importance of eating healthy food. Eat organic vegetables when you can. Stay away from that soy garbage because that's just feminizing men and making women crazy. Understand that plastic, BPA in plastic is designed to lower the male anatomy. So it's designed to make the balls, the testicles smaller and the penis shorter. This is designed, that's why all the estrogen is in there to make all the fish female. They're also destroying the male anatomy at the same time. So we have a whole new learning and understanding of how many ways we are under attack. The fluoride in the water dumbs down our third eye. So we don't even know who we are. So we need someone else to tell us, well, if their model's skewed, we don't stand a chance. And this is why we take our power back. A lot of it is about building your own self-confidence. And I'm going to ask a question, and you already know the answer. I can tell by watching your videos. Who do you trust more, you or me? Your answer has to be you always. Exactly. You know that.
Yeah, and what you said about those demons and other stuff, I think these things are important only when someone is on the lower part of the scale of Stephen Hawking's. If someone is a little bit higher, everything in life goes smoother. So it is for this kind of someone, of a person, it's easy to avoid those obstacles. And I know that you use this scale of, not Stephen, sorry, David Hawkins, not Stephen.
Yes, David Hawkins.
You like this scale. So please explain, if someone has removed the layers of stuck energy from the traumas, just removed, how it goes in life and in the scale of David Hawkins. Yes, exactly.
Okay, so I know you have a copy of this. I want to outline this first. This scale, it's measured in energy. Energy can be another name for consciousness. Consciousness can be called awareness, that innate knowing. And it goes from 0 to 1,000, and you manage your energy body. So I'm going to talk about what you said, and there's a few other things I don't necessarily agree with. So when you look at this, the human body registers between 62 and 78 when it's healthy. Colds register at 58, flus 57, cancer at 42, physical death at 25. So if you've been abused and you've been shamed to keep your mouth shut, that's worse than physical death. We have to understand how this works. So ultimately, in my opinion, our goal is not only to be up here, but it's to be able to feel the whole range of emotions, but you do want to aim for the higher levels of consciousness. So when you talk about control, so fear registers at 100, anger at 150. Do you know how many people I've worked with who are shamed for having anger issues? And I said, anger raised your frequency. Maybe it saved your life until you could deal with it. And they look at me because nobody's ever said that to them before. It's always shaming you. You've got anger issues. Maybe you need to set boundaries, and you should be mad at people. Maybe people screwed you over and they need to be held accountable. So they're not really showing this. So what is happening is, we talk about control addiction. Where is control in this? So it's not on his chart. But when you have to control other people, you have to keep them in fear. You have to keep them in shame. You have to keep them in grief. Right? You have to keep them feeling guilty. So there's a lot of people, when they even work through their own issues, there's other factors out there, other dysfunctional people, maybe in your family or your circles of influence, who are trying to keep you down. So when you talk about this chart and about the demons, what is funny, I'm going to say it's funny, but I don't know if other people will think it's funny. One of my clients, 14 years old, she can see the dark energies. She can see other dimensions. And a lot of the children can, but we teach it out of them and program it out of them. She said she had to change schools because she'd walk around and watch one student had 2 demons on her, and the student would go sick the demon on other students. So it doesn't mean those children were low vibration. It just means all of a sudden they couldn't figure out why all of a sudden they're having bad luck. Well, they're being targeted. We have to understand this on such a bigger level. So when you raise yourself, David, what is his name? Oh, sorry, William Tiller. He works at Stanford University. He works with measuring consciousness energy, and he'll use Faraday cages and psychics and different people because he wants to be able to measure it. Even though sometimes it can be hard, different situations will produce different results. He said in the year 2000, planet Earth came to, we were at a consciousness of 200 collectively. Well, now what's happening? We have 9/11, which brings us back down to fear. We have, oh my goodness, all those terrorists in the Middle East. We have anger. We go down, now we're shamed because we're white. Heaven forbid, the pigments, and my skin's a little different than yours. Come and see me in the summertime and I've got a tan, it wouldn't be the same. But they're really lowering the frequencies of the people by lowering our states of emotion with events that are outside of our control. So we can go through and clean those energies out but we still have to look at the macro, because your environment shapes your individual being just as much as your individual being shapes the environment. It's not just one way. All of it plays an impact. So I'm going to use the example of what I said earlier. You go in first and do your own work. Then you get courageous and you come out and you think, I'm going to help affect change. And you realize how messed up it is. And maybe you take one avenue and you try to work in one avenue, and then something happens and you go in and you do more inner work. And then you come back out and then something else will happen and you'll learn something else, and it'll take you down another rabbit hole that expands your awareness and your consciousness. So it's not a static growth up here. That's a thought. That's a linear thought if we think that's what it's going to be. But notice on this cone, the red is at the bottom and the purple is at the top. That is same as the Hindus. Chakra system, which is the full visible spectrum. And this is why white people are behind the 8 ball in so many ways. I'm not picking on us. We don't understand what our inner knowing is about, our intuition, do you hear voices and that's where you get your messages? Do you see things and that's where you get your messages? I know and I feel and I can't explain it. I can't explain it better than I used to, but I'll know the answer to something and I'm like, I don't know. But I know to feel it in my body, and I know how to go into neutral, like 0 point, and just be able to feel it. This is what they don't want us to be, is the complete human being. And the example I'm going to give, look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Look at the comparison. All the colors are there, but the top 2 colors. Academia wants you to be qualified to be an employee, to make a reasonable living, to work for somebody else. Self-employed businesses are being shut down by COVID. You will be a sheep, damn it. And we're going to program you for 12 years in school and 4 years minimum in university, 16 years so you get your program. This is what they don't want us to know. And this is what we're waking up to. Does that make sense?
Sure, exactly. And one more thing. Let's talk a little bit about the positive and negative aspects of chakras, front and back of chakras, and how the layers of traumas are stored in the chakras. How do you perceive this thing?
So I don't go into, so I know each chakra is associated with different aspects of self. So we have when they're in flow and when we have them in block, but I don't always call front and back. I don't call this always positive. This seems to be the giving side, and this seems to be the receiving side, is how I see more of the chakras. That's why when you take a psychic attack from somebody and they stab you in the back, you're receiving that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So
yes,
this
sure.
is why we're upside. I'm going to explain why we're upside down. When we look at the positive human chakras, the root chakra is your physical and financial security. How many people aren't feeling that with COVID right now? They're all competing, right? So it's material needs, it's your tribe. Well, how many families are not getting along right now because they're all fighting because they have so many different opinions? It's your sense of community and collaboration. When you look at the root side of the shadow side, it's greed. We're seeing a lot of that, survival of the fittest. Some people don't care how others are making out during the COVID as long as they're okay. Competition, aggressiveness, financial insecurity, abuse of power, and consumerism. They want everybody buying from these big companies while they shut down the mom and pops, so that keeps this materialism world going. The sacral chakra is your creativity. And I don't think we're gonna have time to go into this today, but the creativity, artificial intelligence, AI, humans are IA, intelligent already. And when we can learn to turn back on our creativity, which is housed in our sacral chakra, which is where our emotional pain and suffering happens, we can, I'm going to use the word manifest, create. It doesn't matter what you want, but we can create with our minds. This is what they don't want us figuring out. So I was working with somebody who said he could move clouds, and he was wondering if he should go in and start looking at chemtrails and move them out, but you got to know where you're moving them to. So there's a lot of really neat things that we can do. So the sacral chakra also includes sensuality, your sexuality. So they're really trying to mess up everybody right now because all they talk about is mechanics of sex, sexualizing children, free for all, right? They're really trying to, and sex energy is creative energy because you're creating a life with one sperm and one egg. They don't want us seeing the beauty of our already human selves. Positive emotions, feelings, vitality, and playfulness, which people aren't playful right now because they're scared. The shadow side is lack of creativity, lack of self-appreciation. Do you know how many people don't love themselves? They don't appreciate themselves because they've been told you're worthless. You only got a B, you should have got an A in school. There's always a criticism putting people down instead of saying you are magnificent. The addictions are in there, insecurity, jealousy, depression. And there's a lot of jealousy even in the corporate world where people will lie about other people to get them put down so they get promoted. Sexual abuse, sexual misery. Sexual misery can be the, like I said, the sexual mutilation. Sexual misery can be having too many partners. So now your body is trained with other partners. And when you find the right partner, your body's already been trained in a dysfunctional way to have sex. Pornography could be an example of sexual misery, that if you're learning that's how you have sex and you need to watch that to get off, all of a sudden you meet the woman of your dreams. What is she going to say when you say, excuse me, can I go get my phone? I need to see the pictures. So it's misery. There's no woman worth any self-respect would stay for that. So this is where a lot of these things need to change. Lack of emotion. The solar plexus is your personal power. This is where the your energy, your free will, your choices come from. You know, some people say, oh, she's just so, or he's so set in their ways. They're just going for it. Maybe it's not that it's a negative thing. Maybe it's they're so determined because they have free will and they have that sense of personal power. Their self-esteem comes from there, their drive, confidence, willpower, integrity. I say healthy boundaries because it takes a lot of courage to know when your right start and stop and somebody else's start and stop. That's a willpower thing that you know you're not going to walk on somebody else when you can. Just my personal opinion. It's also about respect. In the solar plexus, we've got shame. When you don't think think highly enough of yourself, you're worthless. That's all shame. That's all sex organ energy. It's in the solar plexus, but it makes you feel not good about yourself. Fear of moving forward. You know how many people are afraid of speaking up right now with all the censorship that's going on and the opinions. If you don't agree with somebody else, you may lose your job. So people are afraid to move forward because they know there's a threat out there that's going to potentially confront them. It's also about immaturity, irresponsibility, conforming, lack of boundaries or respect for others, fear and demanding. When your heart chakra, your capacity to love yourself and others. This comes from your heart. This is my opinion, what all these attacks on humanity are about, because if you can shut down the human heart, you can't go into the higher manifestation and manifest from a beautiful place. You're manifesting from fear, from shame, or you don't want to move ahead. So you're manifesting in that energy and you're going to get what you wanted because you're afraid to move ahead. The heart energy is the loving energy, the unconditional love.
Mm-hmm. And
you can be
I can give an example with celebrities. Celebrities are produced by mass media, and then some of them get drugs or they get killed, and the fans have their hearts broken. Yeah. So that's so
that would be a harvest. They would do that intentionally, knowing that the fans are going to harvest the fans' energy. That whole Hollywood thing is just beyond evil.
So is there any method to unbreak the heart?
Yes.
Do you have any?
Yes.
So what
is... And you know who the scariest person, anyone who's going to meet who's been through pain and suffering? Yourself. Because your heart's going to break at the thought of breaking again and reliving your pain. So work with someone who's qualified in whatever capacity that is, who can either hold space with you, who can help you unload all of those other energies that you're carrying that aren't yours. Clear out all of that stuff first. Find out, you might elevate right then and there. I've had clients, I've cleared out other people's emotions. And when they were finished, I said, you're going to sit here for 20 minutes. You're not leaving. I want you, because they were just elevated. I don't want them driving if they're not used to that higher frequency. So you can go into the higher frequencies by clearing out negative stuff. You can also be open to the higher frequencies. If some of that is cleared, you might already be there, but just not be used to it. But you have to integrate those energies. And sometimes it means staying grounded. Sometimes it means just sitting in it. There's times I've cleared energy, like I'll get up at 7, had a session at 10, was over at 11. I was on the couch from 11:10 to about 12:30 because my body had to shut down and I had to go to sleep for it to process the clearing. So there's no one way. But it's not about taking a pill. I don't prescribe anything like that. It's not about taking a pill. It's about feeling this. So when you want to go into your heart, usually 2 energies I clear last is sex abuse and broken hearts. Clear out all the other stuff because it's not going to hurt as much as those 2 things.
Okay, and now throat, this level. People don't want to express themselves, or actually they cannot. They are not able to express themselves. And especially I see that here in Poland, I don't know, in Canada, people are obliged to wear face masks or not.
There's a lot of controversy about it. Some do and some don't. But I'm going to say the negative side of the heart is the apathy. The shadow side. You don't care about anybody but yourself. This is what we're seeing in society. I'm just going to finish up with this one.
Okay.
Grief, lack of self-love, unhappiness, loneliness, and contraction, playing small. And when people don't want their heart hurt, they don't want people to see it. So when you go into the throat chakra, being able to express yourself openly. So I'm getting better at expressing myself because I was never one who thought I would be doing videos and stepping out into a broader arena. Never thought I was going to do it. And it was interesting because I went for a massage yesterday for a friend of mine. She's Polish and she has her own salt therapy room, but we were going through all the oils. And it was interesting when she started working on certain things, I started coughing and we both started laughing because she was working around my neck. It was my throat chakra. So even though I've cleared a lot, there's still stuff in there because maybe in past lives, I know I've been hurt in past lives for speaking up. You know, if you're afraid of fire, chances are you're burned. If you're afraid of drowning, chances are you were drowned. And if you're afraid of hanging, like, you know how you kind of sense it, right? You know that there's a reason here. This fear is illogical. So when we look at the throat chakra, ability to express yourself, what is so interesting about our ornate body, our not ornate, our innate body, our knowing, our voice is what our body listens to. It hears every word we say, good and bad. So when we speak positively about ourselves, our body listens. If we say, oh, I can't believe you're so stupid, you said that, our body listens. And maybe you picked that up, that somebody told you that in your childhood. But if you're still criticizing yourself, you're creating that negative expression, which is creating the shadow side of your throat chakra, which is fear of being seen or heard, and it's deception and it's suppression. So when you ask about the mass, I want to just share this. So this is the 7 chakra system of the Hindus. This is the LBGT flag. You mentioned the throat chakra. Notice there's only 6 colors. Guess what color's missing? The throat. Speak your voice. So the LBGT is about shutting. I'm not saying every gay person, I'm not criticizing the gays. I'm talking about distorting the children's reality. That's the only way I'm coming at this. But they don't want you speaking up, so they've got them masked. When you're masked, you can't speak with your true voice. Your body, your cellular memory can't hear you. How many people struggle with saying, I love you, I love you, I love you, and they're looking in the mirror? Because we're not taught to love ourselves. We're taught to hate ourselves, to compare ourselves to everybody else. And this is why it's so important as more of us speak up. We don't have to be aggressive when we speak up, but we can still speak. I don't think I talk about a lot of controversial subjects. I touch on them, but I don't have an experience with any of them other than what I've researched. And I understand what harm abuse does to the psyche, the heart, the soul of the individual. And I'm not stopping the academics from getting it right or the mental health monkeys from getting it right. But if they're not getting it right, why are people going to them? Who do you trust more, you or me?
Exactly. Right? Okay. And maybe the last question, how to confront aggression with calmness, peace. Someone attacks me verbally. I personally know how to do that, but maybe someone doesn't know how to do that and reacts the same way. So how to use the inner peace, how to use it against aggression?
I might not have the answer that you're expecting me to have. I'm going to say this up front, okay? We talked earlier about energy. Some people overesteem and they'll come and attack you and they assume they have more rights to come in your space. You're 6 feet and point their finger at you for not wearing a mask, but they don't honor their own social distancing. So they come all the way over here. I meet them with the same energy and I right back. Some people wouldn't agree. I notice, and this isn't a judgment, but a lot of older white men will attack me because they don't have the balls to go after the young guys who are 6'4", not wearing masks. I can see the cowardice in them. So they want to come up and show how smart they are and come on to me in a store. Hang on to your ass, buddy. You're going for a ride. That's all I got to say. And I project that with my energy. So we have to stand up for ourselves, but it doesn't even get into a fist fight. And I had one fellow walk into a store. This was the last one I think had happened. I mind my own business. I go down to the end of the aisle and I'm in a freezer. He walks up and goes, "Where's your fucking mask?" and starts yelling at me. And I looked at him and I said, "Did you hear they're pulling children out from under the White House?" He goes, "Yeah, and you're probably a Trump supporter." So this is where you get real quick, right? And I looked at him and I said, "So you know Trump's trying to stop human trafficking. That's an interesting answer." I changed the subject. You say it's about masks. I say, it's about what I want it to be about. And I said, "That's an interesting answer." And then I said, "How many children have you molested?" "Well, his little mask was here, but his eyes are just fear." And I'm like, "Ew, that's a strange answer." Do you think he was done with me then? No. Then the owner of the store comes out, and I've been in that store before. I honor the social distancing, and I try to go in there early or later in the day, so I'm not in a busy time. And he yells at the owner. This is the shame. This is where these people are they need to start owning their shit. He puts the owner in shame. "You're not making her wear a mask." He's getting him to do his dirty work. This is what weak people look like. That's what a weak man looks like. A strong man would say, let's really look at the immune system and let's look at what this is all about. And let's look at this in totality and see what we can do to create a positive understanding about what's going on while honoring our human rights. So anyways, he yells at this guy. There's a woman who came in with him. It turns out he was placing a private order, a special order with the owner of this store. I walked out the side aisle, went back to the front, paid for my stuff. They didn't even want anything in the corner of the store I was in. But I'll tell you, that guy's not going to forget me. I walk into a store and someone says, "You mask?" And I say, "I have a medical exemption. I am exempt," and I have broken my nose at one point and I can't breathe properly. And I say, "I have a medical exemption." They say, "Okay." And I say, "Thank you. I know you have to ask." So I reinforce them. You're nice to me. I'm going to be nice to you. People need to start getting arthritis in their middle fingers for all these people coming up assuming they have the right to tell you what to do. If you're surrounded by 5 big guys, I probably wouldn't have yelled at, you know what I mean? But so you have to assess every situation you're in, but we have a responsibility. People who underesteem themselves have as much of a responsibility to stand up for yourself and say, no. Look at all the people showing up at all these freedom rallies. They're speaking up, using their voice. Now you have police officers who are pepper spraying them, water bombing them, tear gassing them. Who pays the salaries of the police officers? The taxpayer. Even though they pledge allegiance to the government. I've had people come on to me and say, "I'm just jealous because of how much they make." And I'm like, really? We pay your owner's pension, your government pension, your portion of your pension, your salary and your benefits. You work for us. This isn't a jealousy thing. We need to start scaling that whole department back because you're only here to police the people over Mickey Mouse stuff. Everybody's all caught up on COVID, but there's no parking tickets down the street last winter. You're not allowed to park in the streets with snow. Oh, okay, so now that law doesn't matter, but now this law does. And people sit on this hamster wheel of all these laws and rules that are spoon-fed to us, and it's like, enough already. So I am not of the opinion, I don't cause any shit. Somebody told me one day, "You don't cause any trouble." Or, "I don't take any crap." And I said, "Why would I? I don't cause any trouble." You want to wear a mask? Wear a mask. You want to get a vaccine? Get a vaccine. Doesn't mean I'm not going to miss you if something goes wrong. I've done my own work on it. I've made my own informed decision. People have to stand up and decide for themselves what they want to do, right? I'm not here to police anybody. And it's funny, it's usually the people who aren't controlling get called the control freaks. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, everything is upside down if someone expresses. The same way, when someone attacks me, I always think, okay, he has a problem and I express this inner problem in him. That's why he does that. So I don't want to relate to that. I try to be like transparent, and this way it bounces back.
I'm not of that opinion. I think the mental health industry, the New Age movement, a lot of those have been infiltrated by just as much insanity. And I'll give the example of 2 sayings from the mental health industry. Hurt people, hurt people. Well, that always justifies abuse because you're never going to get off that cycle. Take responsibility. It's not all right if you were hurt as a child. You either take responsibility and stop doing it now, and we're going to show you different ways, or you're going to be accountable, but you don't get it both ways. The other latest in mental health is it's not what happens to you, it's how you handle it. COVID, let's take COVID. They took your job away. They've taken your house away. They've taken your children away. You're living in a tented city. Can you imagine the absolute sociopath therapist who would say, it's not what happened to you, it's how you handle it. This is the absolute cruelty in our society. So when somebody comes up to you, it doesn't mean that you brought something out in them. Maybe they're just an asshole. And I'll use example of passive aggressive people who manipulate and gossip behind people's backs. So they don't want you to shine. So they'll go in and say, guess what so-and-so says? I've had this happen recently over the vaccines. Oh, so-and-so isn't going to get the vaccine. And she kept trying to get me to say I wasn't going to get the vaccine. I'm sitting here thinking, why do you care what I do? I see you once a year. I don't even need to see you then. Like, I'm thinking, why do you care? And it wasn't until it came out later that she went to everybody I knew saying I wasn't going to get the vaccination. So if I even brought up the conversation, she's already manipulated their thinking. That is no reflection. I'm no reflection of her. She's just fucked up. She's a sociopath. No empathy, no remorse when she gets called out of manipulation. So we have to understand these disordered personalities come from how much they can empathize with someone else, can empathize with their own pain and suffering, maybe or maybe not. It's their job to deal with it. So when somebody comes up to you, I wouldn't for a minute assume from what I've seen from you that you brought out the worst in them. That's just the psychobabble to keep us from looking at the abusers at the top of the system who've orchestrated the entire system from top to bottom, left to right, to be able to keep abuse and power and victims hurting and the victim base bigger. That's just what I see. I don't cut any slack for anybody anymore. I was at a, this is a little off topic, but I'm going to give another example. I went to see a holistic practitioner. You know, you do clearing, and I had a bit of inflammation in my chest. Turns out it was dairy and a few things I was eating, wasn't eating the right things, although I ate a fairly good diet. When I rang the doorbell, she opens the doorbell and she's looking at me with this strange expression on her face. I'm thinking, hey, I'm going to get one more level of stuff cleared out. And she goes, did you hear that? And I said, hear what? She goes, as soon as you rang the doorbell, she goes, energy went through the house. And I thought, okay, I'm going to dial it down. I might be a little excited today, right? So I can blow out light bulbs and blow appliances. I'm getting better at not doing it. So anyways, we go in for the session and then I come back. What she had prescribed didn't work quite as well as I'd hoped. So I went back for a second session. So then she starts telling me this about it's not what happens to you, it's how you handle it. And COVID hadn't come in yet, but I gave her another example where I don't agree with that. Then she starts asking me questions about my life. And I haven't even finished the question and she peppers me with another question and peppers me with another question. And as I'm answering the question, she's peppering me. And I know she's trying to get me running to make her feel superior. This is not my first rodeo. I know fucked up people. I can see them. I can see it in their eyes when they're insecure now. And I looked at her and I said, I came here for you for information and how to get rid of inflammation. I never asked your opinion about any of these things. And I know exactly what you're doing. I'm not impressed. So as the customer, I have to hold my boundary and come up to her desk and hold her accountable. I never asked you to ask about these things. You don't know what I've done. You didn't even listen to my answers and you went on to the next question. I didn't come here for this. I can look after myself and I will decide where I go for what or what I will learn on my own. This person has seen me on social media, won't friend me on social media. They know when they know. So why don't we stop giving the people who are offside the benefit of the doubt that they don't know when they're crossing into another person's space, whether aggressively, passive aggressively, pretending to care, and all own our shit. Grow up is what we need to do, right? Get out of the codependence in our society. I'm not harsh when I say this. I'm just firmly holding a boundary. I have the right to live my life and not cause you any pain and suffering. You have the right to live your life, but you don't get to cause me pain and suffering. And this is where I think we're all going to grow interdependently, independently. So Alex strengthens Alex, Sandy strengthens Sandy, everybody strengthens themselves, but we come from a place where we want mutual goodness for everyone if they want it, regardless of what it is. If it's prosperity, what does that mean? If it's healthy food, what does it mean? But then we change the energy collectively because now we've set our bar higher and set our standards higher of what we're going to tolerate from a lot of these ass hats. There's 3 hats, white hats, black hats, and ass hats. We figured that out, right? Choose wisely. And it is about choice. You can choose to be happy. You can choose to be healthy. You can choose to clear out your suffering. You can choose to be decent. You can choose to be fair. You can choose to grow and to be your best self. Or we can still play this game running around, everybody trying to get a paycheck, hurting everybody. So Sorry, I went off on a bit of a tangent there.
Super. Okay, have we missed something else? Because on my list, we covered everything.
The one thing I forgot to say about this one, Maslow was a Freemason. Understand that because they're universities, they do not necessarily have the best information or the right information for what all of us need. So if we really get out of that left brain thinking and say, show me true, whatever it is, I'm aligned to truth, whatever, without political, religious, educational, cultural, societal, without any programming, that's how we're going to find our way, I think. But I think we got everything that you and I had talked about. You know, control is the gatekeeper for all the negativity, because while you're controlling somebody else, you're also stopping yourself from growing.
So what is the opposite of controlling, of wanting to control? What is the exact opposite?
Of wanting to control, I would say being free, true freedom, honoring freedom. Most people are afraid. They need to be told what to do. I know so many people, they do not want to be free because they don't want to have to make a decision. You tell someone, okay, let's go back to the vaccine thing, free choice, you know, the freedom. Go ahead and get the vaccine. That's up to you. If your loved ones get it, that's up to you. But you can't say you didn't know. Go ahead and get it. You give people permission, they don't want it anymore. Is everybody's so busy trying to control everybody and tell everyone what to do, right? You want to go and smoke pot and take the government pot, not thinking that they've probably sprayed it with stuff? Go ahead, smoke it. You want to vape? Go ahead. They say it's not good for your lungs, but it's your choice. Smoking, can you imagine all of us running around? You see somebody smoking outside of a building and running up and going, stop smoking. It's not good for you, but we'll do this with masks. Fast food, can you imagine us going to the front of a drive-through? Don't eat it. So those are all the examples of controls, right? People have to make your own choice, but own your shit, own your stuff, own your choice. We've all got access to information, whether we get it from a reliable source or not. So freedom is the opposite, and we are meant to be divine. We are divine beings. We are free. There's no man who governs over us. That was just the structure that was put in place to control our consciousness, in my opinion.
Super. So Sandy, thank you for sharing with us the stuff that you are researching and doing, I think, on everyday level, and maybe some wrap-up sentence from you.
Sure.
Please.
Everyone, we are here in 2021, in my opinion, for a reason. Doesn't matter if you're in your 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s, 40s, 20s, 30s. It doesn't matter if you're a child. We're all here to be here now for this change. And when we really learn to trust ourselves, we are going to bring our best selves to the table, because then the psychopaths and sociopaths who get off on duper's delight, no, you're not buying it. That's going to help break the spell. And we understand who we are. We strengthen without having to be confrontational in a physical reality. Energetically, we're going to raise that bar. And this is where I think we need to be, but we do that. We build a strong, you build a strong moral or a strong spiritual house on a solid moral foundation. We have to get back to morality, right and wrong. I don't get to tell anybody what they do, but if you're going to tell me that having an adult having sex with a child is acceptable, we're going to explain why it's not. You're going to tell me why it's okay to cut a child's genitals off. I'm going to explain to you why it's not. And I can have the debate and hold my own without making it political or having an outcome. And what's going to happen sooner or later, we're going to look to see who doesn't have the morality, who doesn't have the integrity, who doesn't have who's so apathetic they can't feel for others. That's going to be where the divide goes in our society, I think. We all have a choice whether we step into our best self or our lower self. That's my belief.
Super.
Right?
Thank you a lot for sharing.
You're welcome. So my website, can I give you my website, or have you got that?
Sure.
Okay, it's endinggloballoneliness.com, and my email is sandy@endinggloballoneliness.com. I offer a 30-minute free coaching call. If you're not sure what I do, I don't know how much we can get done in 30 minutes. It usually goes over. But just if you want to get a sense of where you want to be, and I'm going to ask you right off the bat, what's your goal? So if you're going to be calling and ask for a call, what do you want to do? Doesn't matter if it's physical, mental, emotional, doesn't matter. At least we have a starting point. So trust in yourself. I can't say that enough. And thank you, Alec, for taking the time to have me come and speak today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.